So we have some time here for some reflections on dukkha. I might not be the only one that when I first encountered Buddhism, there was this thing that I thought all Buddhists believed, that life was suffering. And I was like, I don't know about that. It's kind of depressing. And so these Four Noble Truths that, suffering, its cause, its end, its path, I thought, Four Noble Truths of happiness, that's for me. So I reformulated them. There is happiness. There is a cause to happiness. There is the realization of happiness. There is a path to happiness. But then as I practiced more and more, I learned what dukkha was actually pointing to. I thought, who am I to change the Buddha's teachings? I think he was really onto something. And I thought of my teacher, who would very frequently say, there's a big difference between the experience of dukkha, having an experience of unpleasant, having an experience of an agitated mind, and a deep understanding of dukkha, insight into dukkha, wisdom around dukkha. I said, yeah, you have an experience of your knee hurts. Yeah, that kind of sucks. But to have an insight around dukkha, to really understand, oh, this is this condition of being human. When I really look at it, there's a way that to have knee discomfort, but to have a mind that isn't wrapped up in it. He said to realize that on a very deep level, oh, this is very wonderful. And a little story I want to share captures this in some form. So in a month-long retreat I did in Myanmar, I was with my teacher at Shueomin, and I got bed bugs. And so my body was covered in all sorts of little bites. And my experience of bed bugs was that they are kind of like mosquito bites, but last a lot longer. And so the body was itchy. And I went through various phases with this. The first phase, I would just scratch them all, scratch. But then what happens is I want to scratch more and more and more. And then at some point, I break the skin open, and then it's even more unpleasant. And at some point in there, I realized, wait a minute, the unpleasant, itchy feeling is one thing, and my mind being really agitated about it is another. And so I was like, okay, well, can I just let this be? So what? So there's a scratchy, itchy feeling that's unpleasant. And it was pretty quickly, my mind just let go. It's like, okay, so be it. There's an itchy feeling. And then it didn't take very long where the desire to scratch it just went away. Just, yeah, it doesn't feel good. Okay, so be it. Still cheerful, still calm, still present. I'd sit to meditate and my energy wouldn't get taken off to like, oh, I really want to scratch that. It just, that stuff wasn't coming up. And a week or two later, the itchy feelings just went away on their own. But by that point, it didn't even really matter because I'd already come to a peace with it. It stopped infiltrating my mind. And yeah, it was nice to not have this unpleasant thing, but the deeper form of suffering wasn't the itchy feeling, it was the mind getting really reactive and agitated and not being able to settle. Typically, what we find in life, what the Buddha would call the habits of an untrained worldling, is the only tool we have available to us to be happy or peaceful is to make the unpleasant stuff go away. I've got this conflict with a loved one, I need it over. I've got this body discomfort, I need it gone. There's some situation in my community, my world that's disturbing. I can't have any peace until it's fixed. And so this leads to a lot of fix-it mentality, striving. And the Buddha is saying, yeah, that is one route. You can come to some sort of peace. You just make the unpleasant thing go away. But it's a pretty unreliable route because there's always going to be another thing and another thing and another thing. And there's this other option available to us. What is it to let be? Say, okay, it's like this now. It's like this with the state of my health, state of my relationships, finances, country. It's like this now. The unpleasant thing is one thing, and my mind's reaction to it is another thing. One of my favorite quotes from the Buddha, he says, just as in the great ocean, there is but one taste, the taste of salt. So in this doctrine and discipline, there is but one taste, the taste of liberation. And so dropping the mind's reactivity is that taste of liberation. I remember I once asked my teacher, Tejaniya, said something like, often life just feels very bland, dry, and dull. And then I notice wanting stimulation, entertainment, do something. And I asked him, I was like, what do you think about that? Have you ever had that? He said, oh yeah, I used to have that all the time. I said, well, okay, you talked in the past tense, what changed? He said, well, at some point I realized life is not dry or dull or boring. Life is just life. It's not dry or undry. It's just what it is. He said, it's craving. It's this wanting force in the mind that convinces me it's that way. He said, when I started to see, oh, that's just craving talking, then I could see that, and that's just the weather of the mind. It's not actually true. I dropped off, and it was just, oh, okay, well, here we are. This moment is like this constellation of sensations, emotions, thoughts. It's like this. So I'm to maybe speak a little bit more directly. Dukkha, this word usually translated as suffering. Other translations include stress, anguish, dis-ease, unsatisfactoriness, discontent. One scholar points out that if we really break down the word do in the Pali language means bad. And ka refers to space, perhaps the space of an axle wheel. And so if you have a bad space, a bad axle, and you have a chariot and you're going down an old Indian dirt road, you're going to have a very lumpy ride. And I found that imagery helpful that the Buddha is pointing to. Dukkha is a lumpy ride. And we all have those moments when it's not smooth sailing in our life, in a meditation, on a work day. It's a lumpy ride. I've gravitated in my own mind, if I am to translate dukkha, I like the word friction. It's very simple. It just implies, ooh, not quite right, a little lumpy. But to go to the Buddha himself, or how he talked about dukkha, when he was addressing in his first discourse to the group of practitioners he had formerly practiced with, he went and found them to let them know, hey, I found how to get enlightened. Let me tell you about that. And so he says, now this, bhikkhus, is the noble truth of dukkha. Birth is dukkha, aging is dukkha, illness is dukkha, death is dukkha, union with what is displeasing is dukkha, separation from what is pleasing is dukkha, not to get what one wants is dukkha. In brief, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging are dukkha. And that list is not exhaustive. Bed bugs are dukkha. A friend not returning your text message in an appropriate amount of time is dukkha. Bad night of sleep, not enough money to pay your bills, a public figure causing a ruckus. Dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. This dukkha is all around us. But it is helpful to break it down to 2 simple layers. And this is captured well, one of the Buddha's little analogies, the simile of the darts, where he says, imagine you've been stabbed with a dart. Painful. Does not feel good. He says, often what people do is rather than just be with the one dart and maybe explore how to pull the dart out or how to heal the dart, soothe that wound, he said what they do is they immediately stab themselves with a second dart called craving. That mental anguish and agitation. The hating the wound, like, oh my goodness, why did someone stab me with a dart? Why me? I didn't deserve this. This is terrible. And this squirmy, agitated, get me away from this. Give me some drugs. I don't want to feel this. He said we go through life, we stab ourselves with the second dart all the time. And that first dart, it's unavoidable. I mean, to some degree, you can set up your life in such a way it's a little bit more pleasant and easeful. But at some point, the body's going to get sick. You're going to grow old. Parts aren't going to work so well. You're going to die. And you really can't get away from that first dart altogether. But he says that second dart, this is really the aim of Dharma practice, is we see that dart is optional. I mean, not in a moment. You can't just tell yourself, okay, mind, stop reacting. We're going to be as peaceful as the Buddha now. It doesn't work like that. But through a process of training, of developing the mind, you can learn to slowly release that second dart. I sometimes think of that process as the frequency, duration, and intensity of the second dart lowers. Happens less often, for less stretches of time, and less intensely. To where in the beginning, that second dart of the resistance to the bed bugs or whatever can really take over, and we're in a tizzy, in the vortex of it. Hard to function in our life. More and more, it just becomes the weather of the mind. Like, oh yeah, that's a thing happening, some resistance is there. I don't need to give it my emotional energy. Just breathe. Another layer to this, and one of those translations of dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, it captures a really important layer. And obviously, icky feelings are unsatisfactory. This terrible feeling in your back or an anxiety storm. Yeah, it's unsatisfying. But the Buddha is a bit provocative in that he says even really nice things are unsatisfactory. And he acknowledges if they weren't nice, people wouldn't want them. It's like, obviously, they're nice and they're pleasant. And you get a nice beach vacation. It's like, oh yeah, this is pleasant. But it's unsatisfactory in the sense that it's not going to give us this ultimate ground to stand on. That, oh yeah, I can have as my refuge for my whole life, my enduring, steady happiness, a beach vacation. I go back to my job, that's kind of a bummer. Well, sometime in January, I'll get another beach vacation, and that will last me at least 6 months. Or maybe our version of that is a retreat, or our version is our morning meditation, or our version is a nice supportive partnership, a good job, a nice loving feeling, a warm inner embrace of metta. And he says the thing is, all of these, they end. They're not 100% completely enduring. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have nice, warm, loving feelings and fulfilling jobs and meaningful partnerships. But if we put our core well-being and happiness in that thing, we say, you, partnership, you are responsible for my core happiness and well-being, it's going to disappoint. It's not that deeply reliable. And so just the fact that they end is like, okay, that can be a part of my life, but not the core of my life. And this is a little bit subtler, but there's also something, even while it's happening, the fact that you need to do something to maintain this, you're on the beach vacation, there you kind of have to continue to uphold the beach vacation. Okay, I have to get out of the bed and go to the thing, and here I am, I have to sit here and enjoy. And you get kind of restless, check your phone. It's too hot, let me go under the umbrella. I had a moment once on a retreat where I had some really gross, icky feeling come up, some memory triggered an icky feeling. Maybe some of you have an experience with this sort of thing. Shame feeling, anxiety feeling, just ugh. And the first instinct, of course, is how do I get rid of this? But the Buddha, his invitation with dukkha, turn towards. Okay, so I turned towards. And in the moment, I thought, okay, well, let me bring in some self-compassion. And so I brought myself some love and some care, and it smoothed out the icky feeling. It's like, oh, that's nice. You know, next day, another icky feeling comes up. And maybe to backtrack. So in that moment, I did some self-compassion, and it was nice. It's like, oh, this is nice. I like this. This is way better than the icky feeling. It's sometimes described, compassion is like a soothing balm, like aloe vera on a burn. It soothes the pain. But the next day, for whatever reason, when it happened, maybe I was a little steadier. It struck me, it's like, I don't want to have to do a thing to feel okay. I don't want to have to do this self-compassion practice, like conjure this thing to alleviate it. And I thought, what if I just didn't make a problem of the icky feeling? I just let it be. And in that moment, I was stable enough that I wasn't going to get overwhelmed by it. And then it was there, and it was fine. It's like, oh, it's just an icky feeling. Just relax, breathe. And it was really clear to me that that mode was more preferable than doing a thing. Because if our well-being is contingent on I need to do a thing, I need to conjure up a better mind state, a better emotion, it's not so reliable. But if our well-being isn't contingent on anything, it's just, well, let it be there. Just rest. Drop into the peace and ease that's available. And so in this way, the Buddha says, anytime you have to do a thing, you have to do a vacation, you have to do a practice, it's like, this is good. Really, the whole Eightfold Path is based upon doing wholesome things. It's like, this is certainly part of the path. but you do wholesome things to lead to this point you can really just let go. To see that your well-being isn't dependent on anything. On that core level, it's not dependent on a relationship, on a bank account, on a president, on the presence or absence of bed bugs or whatever. And I often hesitate to even go into this teaching because it's not always so accessible. And it really, I think it's actually a form of spiritual harm when we're really in the throes of something and there is a lot of suffering to tell ourselves, oh, I just let it be. It doesn't always work like that. So this is a big part of, again, the Buddha was in these Four Noble Truths. Well, there's dukkha, there's a cause, there's an end, and there's a path. So much of the Dharma is about that path. Cultivate your capacity for compassion. Cultivate your capacity for mindfulness, for curiosity. Cultivate a supportive network of relationships. Cultivate integrity. Another layer of this I wanted to speak to, we talked about in the meditation, this gripping and feeding. You know, that line in the Buddha's definition, he says, in brief, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging are dukkha. And for the Buddha, the 5 aggregates sort of represent our momentary experience, what it is to be conscious and alive and have feelings and sensations and thoughts and so on. And it's not so much that experience is dukkha, but the clinging. And I find that the easiest way to understand this is just the example of thinking. Most of us who've been meditating for a while probably have some experience, even every once in a blue moon, where a thought just passes through. Some random memory, a random image just shoots through, unimpeded. But then a lot of times there's this experience, the thoughts seem like they're kind of stuck, and they churn and they churn and they churn. You'll spend 5 minutes on a thought chain, or even 10 seconds. And when the mind gets a little more steadied in mindfulness, we begin to see it's as if this thought arises and there's some mechanism of the mind that reaches, that grips it and feeds it and feeds it and feeds it. This gripping and feeding, gripping and feeding. And so that force we could call clinging, the gripping and feeding. We grip and feed different emotions. Some anxious feeling comes up, we kind of grip around it, we fuse with it, form an identity with it. We feed it emotional energy, and then it continues to go along. Maybe some icky sensation in the body, low back pain. There's this way, rather than it just being weather in the periphery, we get kind of sucked into it. We grip around it, we feed it with resistance. And so this energy of gripping and feeding, clinging, this is right at the core of dukkha. If there's no clinging, there's no dukkha. Joseph Goldstein, one of these great Western teachers, probably about 80 or so now, and I'm pretty sure he spent at least a quarter of his life on meditation retreats, which is like a pretty intense amount of meditation to do. And someone asked him, well, what's your practice nowadays after all these years? And he just said, oh, my practice is non-clinging. This is the wisdom of a quarter of your life on retreat. This is my practice, non-clinging. You go right to the core of it. Anywhere the mind clings to anything, there's friction. It's not so satisfying. And in this way, we can still live our life. Again, you can have supportive relationships, you can have meaningful work, you can engage in forms of activism or service, But can you do it without this gripping around, I need a certain outcome? I need this to go pleasantly or go according to my desires. What is it to just show up for life? Here I am. I'm going to give this my care, but without the gripping. What that presents is a mode of being that's just much more spacious and open and comfortable in our own skin. This well-being independent of conditions. This is really the great fruit of the Dharma. This is the third noble truth, the end of suffering. To have a sense of peace and ease that doesn't depend on how things go. I found it helpful over the years to think of this not as you have it or you don't. Either you're some great enlightened master with no suffering, or you're a mess like the rest of us. It more happens in gradations. I love the analogy of it's like walking the ocean floor as it descends. One step, one step, one step. The ocean floor descends. Every so often, something dramatic happens and there's a sudden drop off in the ocean floor. And then descends. Another sudden drop off. And in our life of Dharma practice, it's kind of like this. The Dalai Lama once said to evaluate your spiritual progress, not sit by sit, month by month, but in 5-year intervals. It's like, is there less dukkha? Is my mind a little less reactive? A little less gripping and feeding? And we keep at it, and that process continues. If you've been at this for 20 years and you have the exact same amount of dukkha and reactivity, I would be curious what's going on there. Because that is the taste of the Dharma, the one taste of liberation. It points you in that direction, less gripping, less feeding. And then that opens more space for ease, for kindness, for service. And so the Buddha, with dukkha, he gives a task. He says, dukkha is to be understood. There's one contemporary teacher, scholar, who is really adamant about framing the core teachings not around the Four Noble Truths, but the Four Noble Tasks. And in that first discourse, when the Buddha lists, there are these Four Noble Truths. There's dukkha. The cause of dukkha is craving. There is an end to dukkha. And the path to the end of dukkha is the Eightfold Noble Path. He also, in that same discourse, gives a task. He says, suffering, dukkha, is to be understood. Its cause, craving, is to be abandoned. Its ending is to be realized. The path is to be developed. And so to just hone in today on that first one, what does it mean to understand dukkha? What my teacher said, I shared earlier, that difference between experiencing dukkha and understanding it. It's important right away to say this is not an intellectual understanding in the way we think of it. Like you read an 800-page book on dukkha and you really get its ins and outs. There's one, I think it fits here, another arrow analogy the Buddha uses, I like. He says, so imagine a man was stuck with an arrow. Someone shot a bow and arrow at him, and it's, say, stuck in his leg. It's laced with poison. And someone comes by and says, dear man, let me take that arrow out of you. You might die. It's laced with poison. And he says, wait just a minute. Before we get to the business of removing this arrow, I would like to know, and so it's a long list of things here. The man says, I would like to know, is the person who shot this arrow at me an aristocrat, a Brahmin, a peasant? What is their name and clan? Are they tall, short, or medium-sized? Is their skin black, brown, or dingy? And what village or town or city do they come from? Was the bow that the arrow came from straight or curved? Was the shaft made from a bush or a plantation tree? Was the shaft fitted with feathers from a vulture, a heron, a hawk, a peacock, or a stork? Was the shaft bound with the sinews of a cow, a buffalo, a black lion, or an ape? And the Buddha says, while he's asking all these questions, he dies. And I feel like we go on a lot of our life intellectualizing things rather than getting to the business of meditating. It's like, well, let me read another 400-page book. I'll meditate tomorrow. And when we actually learn to go towards experience, to drop beneath the thinking mind, that exploration and the meditation, okay, so there's an unpleasant thing happening. Can you feel it? Sense it. What's it like? Get intimate with it. I heard recently, I've been really liking this quote, and I find it very supportive. Bhikkhu Analayo talked about mindfulness as the middle way between suppression and fusion. And this is our tool of understanding dukkha. Say you have this icky feeling in the knee. What is the difference between, on one side, you suppress it, you try to ignore it, avoid it. I don't want to go there. Or you tell yourself, no, it's fine. I'm fine. Nothing's going on. Or the other side, you just totally are fused with it, identified with it, caught in the vortex of the icky thing. And so you have those two poles, then you have mindfulness that rests in the middle, that can be with it, be intimate with it, but without being swirled by it. And we could say the same, whatever emotion tends to really grip you, anxiety, shame, anger, despair. I think we all know perfectly well, I certainly do, the fusion with these emotions. You're just kind of caught in them. And also the side of ignoring, avoiding. And so this middle way, what is it to see, oh, this is anxiety? Has this impact on the body? This impact on the thoughts, on the impulses, the behavior? To just sit with that. Oh, feels like this. To rest, to relax, to just meet it. And then we do this for 1 minute. You're like, okay, I've got it. I'm good to go. This is a life's exploration. It's not about let me do this for a minute or even a year so it goes away. The invitation is to understand. And so that becomes the practice. When dukkha arises, I meet it. Not with this expectation it will go away. I meet it to gain wisdom, to just learn. Oh, it's like this. And as that learning sets in more and more, like my bedbug story, we begin to realize the way that we contribute to the suffering. Oh, I'm contributing to this by hating it. Interesting. How is that working? How exactly is this resistance to these itchy feelings coming in? How am I gripping and feeding them? The more we study that, something in us begins to see the optionalness. It's like, oh, I don't have to feed that hating. I don't have to feed that gripping. Sometimes, well, maybe related here, the Buddha speaks quite fondly of disenchantment. In our culture, to become disenchanted is usually not a very good thing. But for the Buddha, you're on the doorstep of enlightenment. And it's to see the way the Buddha talks about disenchantment is we are enchanted with feeling good. We are enchanted with the great job and the great partner and the beach vacation. And we put our life's energy in trying to manipulate everything to go the way we want it to. And then it inevitably doesn't work. Or without even really realizing it's what we want to do, we put energy into, I hate this itchy bedbug feeling, make it go away. And we give it our energy, we give it our energy. And so the Buddha says with all of this, this disenchantment sets in. That's like, I'm just tired of trying to manipulate my way into well-being, control my way into well-being. I'm tired of getting involved in this like constant needing to do a thing. Maybe I just let it be. I heard Rob Burbea, one teacher I like, he talked about this as a pointer in taking on holy disinterest. The holy disinterest in this knee pain. Taking on this mode of, I'm just not going to get involved with all this stuff I don't actually care about. When we look at our day-to-day life, how much time do we put into things we don't care about? Ultimately, Instagram, YouTube, busy, 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 read the news, do this, that. Yeah, some of that's probably supportive. And you send a message to a family member. Spend 5 minutes figuring out what's going on around you. But how much time do we spend on things that don't actually lift us up, that aren't actually that helpful? He said, can we take on this spirit of holy disinterest to the things that don't really fill my cup? Just say, I don't want to bother with that. We notice our mind churning, whether it's rehashing past circumstances, planning for the future, just holy disinterest. I don't want to get involved in that. Sure, if some form of thinking really lifts us up and is supportive for our life, great, go for it. But having this discernment, which forms of thinking or doing is actually beautifying my life and which is just noise. Maybe I'll just share one more thing. Also, I heard this story from, an exchange with Gil Fronsdale and a student, another insight teacher. Someone asked him something like, what is the meaning of life? And I think we all have some question. What is the purpose of life? Am I enough? Can't we all just get along? Something in our heart that yearns for some kind of answer. And he said, well, what is the part of you that wants to know? And that is dukkha. If we really look, what is the part of me that says, what's the point of all this? We turn towards that. This is the Buddha's invitation. Suffering is to be understood. Turn towards. In those moments when that question, what is the meaning of it all, is alive, like look in those moments, what is happening in my being? Is there just a kind of slumpiness of my energy? A depressiveness? Some kind of raw resistance of like, why? He said, if you really turn towards that, you start to see there is something going on there, some kind of dukkha. And really, every single person in this room has some form of that. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't be here. You'd be floating on your bliss cloud elsewhere. And I think a lot of us are probably relatively balanced, steady folks. It's like, okay, things are good enough. But there's a big difference between good enough and what the Buddha's pointing to. And so we're here. And this is sometimes considered really the authentic, honest starting point of a spiritual path, is to recognize there is something in me that it's not quite right there. Some sense of a little off, some sense of friction, some sense of longing. And start there. That is the path to how dukkha reveals itself in our being, and we get intimate with that, and we learn about it, get curious about it. And as U Tejaniya said, that bit I shared earlier, when I presented one of my forms of dukkha, life feels dry, stale, blah, boring. I said, really, really look at that. Life is not actually those things. It's craving convincing you of a story that you're believing. Technically it would be delusion speaking through craving, but so just look at that, get intimate with that, understand this is what's going on. See those moments when life does not feel dull, bland, dry, boring, when it shifts. There's a lot of insight in those pivots from I'm fine to I'm off. What came about in that pivot? Well, maybe to preempt, I'm going to do questions, but I'll just say this question always comes up because I talk about craving and wanting, cause of suffering, and it's like, well, I have to want things. And just to put it briefly, for the Buddha, there is wanting that is rooted in wisdom, and there is wanting that is rooted in delusion. And he says this kind of wanting rooted in wisdom, this is good, this is to be supported. To want to care for your family, to want to uplift your community, to want to be loving, to walk a path. He said, this is good, nurture this. But this wanting to get rid of my icky feeling, this wanting to just feel good, seems like on some level there's nothing wrong with feeling good, but when we're continually putting our life's energy, I gotta fix it. He said that first type of wanting, it's rooted in peace, or it's flavored with peace. The second type of wanting, flavored with agitation. You're not okay until you get there. I'm a little off and irritable until I fix the thing. He said the wise type of wanting, there's a quality of faith to it. Like, no, this is the best route. I'm just putting forth my energies into what I care about. Whether it happens or not is out of my control. So, anyhow, I think I'll pause here.